Trump and the Trumps, et cetera, the defense. And I think there will be sufficient record that that the judge and the clerk were not biased against them. But interestingly, what really stuck out here in my mind was the fact that this mistrial motion that they made really seemed to have ad hominem attacks again on the clerk and gratuitous naming, including with photos of the clerk, which, my first reaction was this is clearly a violation of the gag order. That the gag order that don't forget, that Trump has already been found to have violated twice, and one of the times he was actually found not credible. If you remember, he went outside and he made a speech about the person sitting next to the judge, and that was clearly a violation of the gag order. And the defense attorney came in and said, no, they weren't referring to the law clerk, they were referring to the witness. I think it was Michael Cohen at the time. And the judge said, no, I want to put Donald Trump on the stand under oath. And he did. He testified under oath. He said he meant Michael Cohen, not the law clerk. And the judge found him not credible and fined him like $15,000, I think, total in these fines. But it doesn't matter. They don't seem to think that the gag order applies to them. And they went on and on about how the evidence of bias is tangible and overwhelming, and it has tainted the proceedings. And look, they went back into a high school alumni newsletter, and they looked into the law clerk's political donations, which interestingly, I thought when I first saw that, law clerks aren't supposed to give political donations, but apparently there's an exception because she's trying to run for judge. And so, apparently she's allowed to do that. Now, in New York, if she's running to be on the ticket for a judge, it's almost all Democratic. So it wouldn't be surprised if, because New York's very Democratic, I wouldn't be surprised if that were the case. But I don't know I don't see how anything they wrote in there would be a basis for a mistrial. And I don't think that the appellate courts, who all have clerks, by the way, that help them, I don't think they're going to take lightly to this. What about you? What do you think?
Yeah, I don't think the appellate court is going to take kindly, as you said, to Judge Engoron or our entire. I'm going to defend now. You and I are New York bar members. The entire New York State Supreme Trial Court system is under attack by outsiders who don't know a darn thing about how things work here. Chris Geisel works in Florida. Alina Habba is a New Jersey lawyer that works out of Regency co-sharing space in Manhattan. It's not her primary office. And so she's not a New York lawyer. She doesn't head down to 60 Center Street on a regular basis and ply her trade. And Cliff Robert, the other lawyer that I think they lean on for New York practices out of Long Island. Nothing wrong with Long Island. It's just not Manhattan. And the fact that they don't understand the role of the principal law clerk in a long bench trial where the judge is the trier of fact, to manage the documents, to even forget manage the documents, as I said in my hot take, to go further, to say to the judge, in terms of a human being, not artificial intelligence, but real intelligence, to say to the judge, that thing that Don Jr. just said this week doesn't comport with what he said 2 weeks ago when the New York Attorney General had him on the stand, and here are the 2 transcripts that show the mismatch, Judge. That's not advocacy, that's not co-judging, that's being a proper law clerk, just like when my law clerks working for me, and I'm in a courtroom because it takes a village to put on a trial, let alone decide a trial, hands me the right document at the right time for the right witness. It's not, the Michael Popok's law clerk is co-lawyering. No, they're doing their job to assist the professional. These are paraprofessional positions. And the law clerk has a defined role that's completely different than in most places. A lot of, as I said on a hot tip, federal court, they have law clerks who generally just came out of law school or recently out of practice. They're not usually members of the bar, and they work for a couple of years for that particular judge. They write a lot of the orders. It would be the equivalent of you and me in federal court saying, we object to the law clerk for the federal judge writing the first draft of the order. The judge should be doing that. Oh my God. And making everything that's ordinary and mundane sound nefarious, which is what they're doing here in their attacking brief. And I agree with you. I think that the ridiculous criticism of how Engoron is running his courtroom, consistent with New York practice. The principal law clerk is different than in most states here in New York. Every principal law clerk is a lawyer. This principal law clerk was a senior trial lawyer for the Corporation Counsel of the City of New York, meaning she was the municipal lawyer doing civil litigation. She's very skilled. She didn't get the judgeship this time. She'll probably, based on Donald Trump, will probably give her enough brand pump that she'll get the election next time. But they're not, I haven't observed a darn thing that's inconsistent with my experience in these courtrooms. But everything to them is, oh, she sits next to the judge. Every staff sits next to the judge. Could be the bailiff, could be the deputy, could be the clerk, could be the principal law clerk. They all sit there. It doesn't make them a co-judge. He's not sharing his chair. There's another desk up there that was built for a reason. And so when the first department gets this, it's going to be a whole lot of, well, I'll use an example from my own career. I once had a judge who with my opponent, who loved this one piece of evidence in this case, and fell in love with it and kept bringing it up at every hearing. And finally, at summary judgment, they lowered the lights and they put on this presentation, this PowerPoint presentation, featuring this key piece of evidence, sort of like the attack on the law clerk. And then they were all breathless about it. Oh my God, Judge, it's the worst thing. And the lights came up, and the judge, like Judge Engoron, looked at my opponents and said, tell me that's not your entire case. Tell me you have more than that. And you could just hear the deflation. It was like somebody popped a balloon, and they ended up losing the trial. This was a pre-trial, like a pre-hearing issue. The first department is going to hate the attacks on the law clerk and on the judge, and is going to deny this, and nothing is going to stop the completion of this trial sometime before Christmas. And then the person they're attacking, the two people they're attacking, who are not going to get replaced, are going to write the decision, likely, as you and I talked about last week, to nail Trump for at least 5 out of 6 of the remaining fraud counts, and then take away his buildings, his real estate, his houses, and his money. And so I don't think this is a great place to be if you're the defendant, to be attacking the judge and then hoping you get a reversal from the first department, or ultimately the Court of Appeals, the highest court in New York, based on something this judge did wrong. If you're banking on that, you are going to lose your company.
I have a question. Sorry, a little frog in my throat. I have a question. You said you started this with, I have to defend our New York court practice. So unlike me, who's really spent their career in New York, you've practiced in Florida and other places. Are you saying that the practice of law clerks really aren't? I just assumed that's everywhere because that's so entrenched and ingrained in New York practice. I just assumed that's what all courts and judges do. Is that not interesting? Okay.
Yeah. Well, I'll give you
I learn something every episode.
I'll give me too from you. I'll give you an example of Florida, because I practiced a lot in Florida. I practiced there for 20 years and practiced here for 30 years. And so Chris Keiss and I are sort of, have a similar background in that. In Florida, in the trial level, there is no principal law clerk. There's no clerk. Most judges don't take on a clerk from a law school. They have what's called a judicial assistant, or a JA. They are a paralegal or administrative person that is like an air traffic controller, controls all the scheduling and the briefs, and you gotta make sure you're on the right side of the JA, or you're not gonna get that emergency hearing that you need, or you gotta get that brief in to the judge and it's a little bit later, it's missing something, and they're the gatekeeper for the judge.
But other than a different title, what is the difference? In other words, it sounds like
they're not writing. Well, they're only doing the administrative things that I just outlined. The JA in Florida is not writing first drafts of opinions. Is not sitting with the judge and handing notes in generally and saying, that guy there, he said something different 3 weeks ago. The judge is sort of on their own, and they don't rely on the JA for that. In federal court, it's a little bit closer, as you know. In federal court, the law clerk, which is not a lawyer, is usually a law student who just graduated and has this plum position that, that they want, this federal clerkship. They take notes during all of the hearings or trials. The judge will often ask them, like Judge Angoran is doing at a break, or even during the trial, that last comment that person, is that consistent with what the appraiser said 2 days ago? Wasn't there a document? Oh yes, Judge, hold on, there was an exhibit. That's the clerk, and the clerk will often write the first draft of the decisions by the judge. And second, I know a lot of law clerks, and they will tell you very little of what I wrote got changed by the judge. He'll say, I want the ruling to be in favor of the plaintiff on this issue. Go write the decision. And they write the decision, and then the judge says, okay, his major or her major addition to it is adding the signature. So that's the federal law clerk system. New York is sort of